For context, this is from the perspective of a female who at the time of this incident occurring was 20 years old. It was 2011, and both myself and my dad had just come out of the Honda Center in Anaheim, California, after we had attended a taping of Monday Night Raw. That night was extra special because it was the evening in which The Rock came back, which at the time was not expected by anyone. So you can envision both mine, my dad, and all the wrestling fans' excitement. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have no idea what I'm talking about, but for my fellow wrestling fans, then you'll know. Needless to say, I want to focus our attention away from the wrestling event and instead to what took place afterwards, specifically at the eating establishment we chose to fill our empty stomachs with, at Carl's Jr. Oh yeah, I should probably just make a quick note, just a little fun fact, for those of you on the East Coast who don't know. Carl's Jr. is the same thing as Hardee's. I actually didn't know about that until years later when I traveled to the East Coast to visit a friend. So anyways, the Carl's Jr. was pretty busy, and my dad refused to wait in the drive-thru line. Not that I could really blame him, considering it was way less packed inside the restaurant itself. So we head in, and I grab my usual order of a spicy chicken sandwich with french fries and a Sprite. My dad ended up getting himself a big Carl and a Coca-Cola. We then spent approximately 20 minutes sitting at one of the tables, talking about wrestling and everything that happened at Monday Night Raw. This was when suddenly, my dad has this funny look across his face. I asked him what was wrong, and he says he suddenly has a really bad urge to use the restroom. Number 2, to be specific. Well, I sure wasn't stopping him. I told him I would wait here at the table, and he makes a mad dash toward the restroom so he could unload his care package, which was desperately waiting for delivery. Sorry, I digress. I took out my phone and I started looking at the various pictures I took so that I could share them with my friends and family on Facebook. But what sort of caption would I put? I wasn't sure, but after a few minutes, I began to smell something really bad getting closer to me. It's like the smell that someone hasn't taken a shower in months. Moments later, I felt a light tapping on my shoulder. Expecting my dad, I looked up, only to see a face that, to this day, sticks to me like glue. Here's this really disheveled looking man with a creepy grin, yellow stained teeth, acne on his face, long greasy black hair, and a really long beard. Without even saying another word, he goes in for a hug and then starts to tell me I was really beautiful and that I reminded him a lot of his wife. Yeah, that was a really weird comment for him to say, even if it was true. I told him thanks in an awkward manner, and then I try to pull away from him. He then gets a bit frustrated and goes in for another hug. Now, he states, "Do as I say, because if you don't, I'm going to stab you." That sent chills down my spine, and I started to hold my breath, thinking this guy was clearly out of it. Was he really armed with a sharp object? And if he really was he going to do what he said? Thank the Lord that it's at this moment my dad is running over and he starts to yell out really loud obscenities. "Let go of her. I'm going to kill you." Yeah, my dad is super protective. Thank God this creep lets go of me, and now he starts to explain to my dad that he was one of my friends from school and that he was just catching up with me. Bear in mind, this guy clearly looked like he was in his early 40s. Sure, there are older people who attend college, but I knew not this guy. This was something he clearly made up on the spot. Well, I told my dad that he said he was going to stab me, and this sends the creep flying out the back door, out of the Carl's Jr. in a panic. Clearly, I was shaken up myself. I immediately went over to my dad, crying and hugging him ever so tightly. Some customers who had just been watching finally came over and asked if I was okay, to which I just say, yeah, but deep down I was telling myself, why didn't you people do anything? Although to be fair, I'm sure they didn't know what was happening since they were minding their own business and I didn't say anything. Well, we ended up calling the authorities, and once they were there, everyone worked together to give a statement, as well as some visual details. Fast forward a few days later, and I'm made aware of this creep's arrest. I guess he was some homeless guy who was well known by the authorities for apparently being very violent and aggressive with people, to which I was made well aware of on that night that I encountered him. Why in the world he chose to go after me of all people, and to go inside the Carl's Jr. and say what he said he was going to do, I don't really know. But I guess he wasn't all there when he did that. Truly, one of the scariest experiences I have gone through. So back in the early 2000s, when I was attending college, I used to frequent IHOP quite a bit, seeing as I had a cousin working there, and he would give me discounts anytime he could. How I love the chicken tenders and mashed potatoes, even though most people get traditional things, like pancakes. I was different, and I still am. Now, this story that I'm sharing with you is something that, to this day, sticks with me as one of the most, if not the most, frightening encounter of my life. I genuinely believe that had things not gone the way they did, I, or those involved, may have been seriously harmed, if not worse. Here's how that experience of mine goes. That day, I remember I was hanging out with one of my best friends. We're going to call her Crystal. We had just gotten out of seeing a movie. It was approximately 9 p.m., and I asked her if she wanted to get a bite to eat. She said sure, but she had no idea on where we could go. This was when I mentioned the IHOP near my house, as well as the cousin I had who worked there. She said, nice, and the plan was set. We made the 5-minute drive to the IHOP, and soon we take our seats. It was relatively empty. Only 2 other tables had customers, so at least we knew the service was going to be pretty fast, and I sure remember it was. My cousin, being there, came to take our order, and after another roughly 10 minutes of waiting, we get our food and we start to eat. Yes, I did get the chicken tenders after all, just like I mentioned in my intro. So far, everything has been pretty good. Fast forward approximately 40 minutes, and we're being told that IHOP would soon be closing and we would have to leave since they needed to clean up. Sounded fair to me. Before leaving, however, Crystal excuses herself and heads to the restroom to take care of her business. This left me with my cousin, who had come over to talk to me, and I started telling him about the movie we had watched. During our conversation, we happened to look out the window, which overlooks the parking lot that's also empty, and we can see a large figure just stumbling around, acting very bizarre and suspicious. It was hard to make out any details, and apart from just acknowledging his presence, we continue to talk to each other. That's until the figure comes closer to the window, and we get a better look at him. He's wearing a regular beat-up sweater and beanie combination. He's got really long, thin hair, acne on his face with some scar marks too, and eyes that read, "I want to kill you." At least that was the vibe he was giving off. We did find his sudden approach to the window a bit strange, but it was only going to get worse when he started to bang on the windows. He then began yelling like a madman. I was left a bit shocked as my cousin tells him he needs to knock it off. I'm not sure if he heard him too well, but after what seemed like an eternity, maybe only like 15 seconds, he stops and then walks away and disappears out of sight. Talk about strange, but little did we know this was just the beginning. A minute later, Crystal comes back and tells both myself and my cousin that she saw some really weird guy through the front window, flapping his arms around and yelling random things to the air. We mentioned the details of the guy we saw moments ago, and she confirms it was the same dude she saw. It's now at this point I told her we should probably wait until he leaves so that he wouldn't try doing anything to us, seeing as we're both petite females who were in their early 20s at the time. We didn't want to get mugged, or worse. That was why my cousin, who is a tall 6'3", 200 pounds and quite intimidating, offered to help us. So, Now, with the pavement out of the way, we begin to make our walk down the little hallway toward the front entrance. We didn't even turn the corner when we started to hear yelling and cursing. It was the strange, crazed man. He's now inside IHOP. To make things worse, now he's got a small knife, and he's yelling that he was going to kill anyone who tried to get out, followed by saying that he was here for his money. Now, I was 99.9% certain this IHOP owed nothing to this man, not that anyone needed to tell me. My cousin immediately jumped in front of us and tells us to run into the back room, along with the other employee who's now on the phone calling for the police. The crazy dude starts to argue with my cousin as he's trying to de-escalate the situation to the best of his ability. Of course, I didn't want to leave his side, but you know family members who are very protective. They don't want anything happening to you. I reluctantly decided to leave his side, and we all take shelter in the back room/kitchen area, yelling to my cousin to get back here and that it's not worth being a hero. This back and forth continued for roughly another 20 or so seconds, and my cousin finally listens and joins us in the back room. The lunatic with the knife now starts to approach the opening area from where we were looking at. I'm talking about that opening where the cooks place the plates of food, where the employees grab them to take them to the customers. And he actually tries to squeeze his way on through. Thankfully, he didn't fit, and even if he did, we had a bunch of pots and pans ready to defend ourselves had he tried to attack us. He finally decided to give up his pursuit, and now he started to make his way to the front door. That's where police were waiting for him. The next few minutes are a standoff between him and the cops, and luckily, it seems like somewhere in his drug-induced mind, he decides it's not worth getting shot, and he gives up. Finally, the ordeal was over, and we each are able to let out a sigh of relief. That was pretty much all there was to it. We did talk to the police, and after roughly an extra hour, I finally took my friend back to her house before returning to mine. Let's just say that once I was in the comfort of my own home, I broke down crying, telling myself that things could have gone down so much worse. I guess I should be thankful that even to this day, they never did. So that's my story submission